Stirred by my need, invited by your promise, called by your spirit. I enter your presence, you're all I need. How could I forget it? More of you, less of me. I confess my need for more.
Good evening. I was just logging on to Facebook myself and realized our music was dimming. Hey, welcome to Living Hope Online. We're excited to be able to see you guys here. And as always, we just love being able to get together and hang out, and whether that's the three of us, whoever the three of us happens to be on any given Wednesday, or you guys virtually, like it's really neat to be able to have kind of the community we've built, and hopefully to be able to be a place where people can share thoughts and ideas and experiences and do that freely without judgment and without concern of how they're going to be thought of or anything like that. That's really what we've tried to foster here over the last good handful of years since we've been doing this now. And I think we've done that. I think we've done really well. A part of that's because if you're somebody that tunes into us consistently, that's partly because of you. If you're somebody that's new with us, just know that this is what we are hoping, is that this isn't like a real, like, we're right and you're wrong kind of place, or, man, we're going to tell you how life should go. Anything like that. That's not really what we're trying to do here. We're really hoping to just be in conversation and in community with each other, and to hopefully have all of us grow each other through that. If you are new with us, that's what we do. We're going to have a conversation. We'll be talking about something. We actually want you to be a part of this conversation as well. And we want you to be able to comment on the video. And we have our phones, devices. We have people that aren't up here with us that are very specifically logged in just to be able to help interact, since we'll be talking some. We sometimes miss some things. But we really want you to be a part of the conversation. Nobody's tuning in just to listen to us talk, including ourselves. So we really want to be hearing from you. And one of the things you can do to help this conversation continue and to help this conversation grow, and more so just to even engage with people that you know maybe a little bit more personally than you know us even, is to share this video. You can share it to your feed, and then people that are your friends specifically through Facebook are able to see this and experience the conversation as well, and hopefully keep the conversation going. There have been plenty of times in my time of doing this where people that I work with that I never even knew watched, or things like that, have brought up to me like, hey, I was watching the other night, this conversation was interesting, and then you're like out of context, and so you're like, wait, what's happening right now? Yeah, it takes you a second, but it's really cool, and so we would really encourage you to do that. Maybe even just share specifically with somebody as we have the conversation that you're like, hey, we were just talking about this kind of thing recently. You should listen to this conversation. Those are all things you can do that help spread the conversation. Not necessarily get us views. I mean, that's great, but like more so that help spread this conversation and keep this kind of community being built and the depth of that being built. So those are all things you can do. We're excited to see you here. As always, already see several people on. We have been talking for the last month and a half, something like that. I have a harder time gauging since we're every other week all of a sudden. But we've been talking for about the last month and a half about reasons why people don't go to church, like why I don't go to church, right? And we've kind of covered everything from people that are hypocritical in the church to, I can have an individual relationship with God without going to church. That's not a place where I feel connected to God, and several things in between. And we're going to kind of wrap that conversation up tonight a little bit and just kind of discuss a little bit more about that. And before we introduce ourselves and really get into it, I always try to like to give you guys a little bit of a head start on questions so you have something to start sharing. First of all, we'd love to just know if you're watching, where you're watching from, something like that. That's always great. And then also, the question that we're going to kind of start off with tonight is, in your experience, we've heard a lot of things, we've talked about a lot of things, but in your specific experience with family, friends, your own life, why is it, what is the most common reason why people in your circle maybe don't go to church? I'd just be curious. So what is the most common reason you experience as to why people don't go to church? And then we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves to give you guys time to start typing, and then we'll also answer the questions to continue to give you time typing. So to my right, we have...
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan.
And then over to my left...
I'm Mary.
And I'm Justin, and if you've been with us a lot, you probably know us. If you haven't, then that's who we are, and now you know. And so what do you guys think? Like in your circles, in your experience in life, doesn't have to be people you know right now, could be throughout just life. What are some of the most common reasons that you guys have experienced? Could be stuff that we've talked about in the last few weeks, whatever. But what are some of the most common reasons you guys have actually experienced with people not going to church?
On Sunday, because they have soccer or baseball or other sports games, other conflicts with their kids' activities.
Gotcha. Busyness.
Those that are very critical, you'll always get this, well, all they want is money.
Mm.
You hear that a lot out there, just an awful lot.
Yeah.
And usually the Sunday they show up to go to church, we have a sermon on money.
Is that right? Yeah.
So it's interesting. So even beyond money, do you think, and this is just me thinking out loud, but like how much do you think there's like the idea that including money, but like the church just wants something from me? Do you feel like that's like the underlying tone, or is it like real specifically just money, do you think? I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Well, they say very specifically money, but it could be more, like you're saying, yeah. But they have to have one focal point, don't they?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's interesting. I think for me, like a lot of times it's just, there are plenty of people I know that, quite frankly, are just like, I don't know that I really believe in God, so why would I go to church? Like that doesn't, that wouldn't make sense for me to go to church if I don't have a belief in God.
Yeah, I was thinking of it from a Christian's perspective.
Sure.
Of why, but absolutely, that's that's the day off. It's the day of rest, right?
Sure, yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
I want time for me time.
Well, there's many people, for some unknown reason, that are afraid to come to church.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
You've talked about that before. What do you, say a little bit more about that.
They're just afraid to come to church. They don't know why, but maybe it's conviction. Or I remember back years and years ago when my brother Wendell, I'd go down Mom and Dad's and he'd be conveniently gone. And I'd say, "Where's Wendell?" "Well, he said last week he's afraid of you."
Oh.
Well,
And I said, "Why would he be afraid of me?" Wendell was very backslidden at the time, right? And he just didn't want to face me. And there are people, and I would never have said anything to him, but there are people that feel that way about church too, I suppose.
oh yeah. Well, and I know Pastor Carey's talked about people not wanting to come to church because
Yep.
oh my gosh, I'll just burn up or something if I walk through the doors, or they don't want to be judged. They feel like
Yeah.
if they go to church, they'll be judged because they don't realize. So many people have this misconception that church is full of perfect people.
Yeah, sure. Or that church thinks that it's full of perfect people.
Oh well, there
Right.
are a few like that.
That's
true.
more. I think maybe that's maybe even more of the problem. Yeah, I think for me, like there's definitely been times that I don't know that I've been afraid to go to church, but like I've definitely been. What's the right word? I feel like I've let God down, maybe, like or the general. I guess God. I don't know who else I would have been letting down, but like I think that like that's been the feeling like that I've had before. Like, oh man, like I've really.
Is it like a
screwed
discomfort
up.
kind of feeling?
Yeah, like like am I being fake by showing up? I think
Oh,
I think
yeah.
there have been times
Imposter
where I felt
syndrome.
that. Yeah, where I've kind of felt like that.
I
And
think it's a dangerous thing to stay out of church because you can get to the place where you don't want to go back. You get satisfied, and for a while you're not, but it can become a habit, and you may not see him again. A lot of people have done that.
sure, John
I
was
have
meant.
done that in my lifetime. Been out of church for a while, and for some reason, and then all of a sudden, I didn't want to get up on Sunday morning and go.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
And
it's a
that's kind of
habit.
a dangerous place to place yourself, you know.
Sure, sure. Somebody had commented that just exhaustion with their work schedule, by the time they, when church happens to be, that they're just too exhausted with schedule. And actually, there are a couple people in life I know that are like that, who, just the way their work schedule works out, like they're asleep. That's the time they would be asleep, like is during church. And so I think that's kind of interesting in that idea of all this. So when I was thinking about this, as we're, again, kind of wrapping up this whole conversation over the last couple months, like I really started thinking, so then what is the purpose of church? Because if you don't know the purpose, if you don't have an idea of what the purpose is, then I think, why would you come? Why do you do anything if you don't know the purpose behind it? At least that's how I kind of live. I get that maybe that's not where everybody lives, but I tend to not just do a lot like very purposelessly. Is that a word? Felt like there were a lot of L's in there, even though I only feel like there was one. But it's just hard for me to say. Purposelessly. Yeah, it just feels like a lot of L's.
You could just say without purpose.
Well, Mary,
It's not as fun.
yeah.
That's not fun.
If you're just not, that's not what's on my paper, so I don't know what to tell you. That's the purpose of how I had it written. So that's my next kind of question, my next thought that I'd be curious to have you guys talk about and to hear what your guys' thoughts are out there. What it really is the purpose of church? And this can be like what you think the purpose of church is. It could also be like, what do you think other people think the purpose of church is? Maybe people that don't go to church. Maybe you don't go to church. And like, what do you think the purpose of church is? But I'm very interested, like, what do you or others perceive the purpose of church being?
So it's interesting because a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, last week, I don't know. This past Sunday I was here, but 2 Sundays ago I was not here because of one of those aforementioned activities of children. And so I wasn't at church. And I mean, even when you watch back online later, it's not quite the same. And that week was one of the, and I don't remember the name of the book. You might know it's a kid's book. The very bad, horrible, no good day or something
it's
like
something
that.
like
and
that.
Alexander had this
Yeah.
bad day, and it was a horrible, no good. Just a terrible week. And I was just, my emotions were all over the place, and I was kind of defeatist and very apathetic, and just kind of all week. And I realized after church this past Sunday that it's like, you know what? Going to church helps reset
Energizes
and
you.
refuel and energize. Thank you,
Yes.
Mary. That's a good word, because I have had a much better week. It's still bad, but I'm dealing with it in such a different way. And I think that's because I had the opportunity to pause and focus a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very important, and why it's important to go to church.
Yeah. Mary, before you jump in with some of the purpose of church that you've heard or that you think people perceive, I just wanted to get to some of the comments. Pat had said, most of what she hears as far as why people, don't go to church is she feels like just people grasping for a valid reason that in their minds to make us not ask them to come to church again.
Yeah.
So they're trying to come up with the best, if I'm reading that right, the best excuse to make me not ask them again. It just covers it. Don't ask me anymore. And then Jennifer said it's easier to stay home and watch online, but I get a lot more from actually being in person and feel more present and connected. Jennifer, you're ahead of the game on what we're going to maybe talk about some tonight, so that's really cool. And then Pat had also said, oh, poor Jennifer said that was her week. So much to deal with. I assume she was talking about your comment. Yeah, that's no good. Very bad day. Yeah, whatever. And then Pat said, I really feel like I need my church. They're like my family. They love and they care for my family, and I can depend on their prayers. So answering the question, what is the purpose of church, for her feels like that. Go ahead. Oh, sorry. I thought you were gonna jump in next with
I wasn't
why
going to jump in.
purpose of church. What people feel like the purpose of church is.
Well, for me, it's the fellowship. I like to talk.
No.
Yeah. Does that surprise you? I just love to talk. And at church, you do, because everybody's looking for the same thing. When you come to church, everybody wants that fellowship. They want something. They want to know they're wanted. They want to know they're loved. And how do we express that any better than words? you know. So fellowship, it means a lot to me. And if I do miss, I miss that so much, so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Nicole had just commented. She said the purpose of church. Oops, something popped up in front of me. Okay, purpose of church equals celebration of my faith. And she was saying how she just misses people. And then Jennifer said, I should always read these first, otherwise I end up like stumbling through them. On God and what the real priorities are, sometimes it's a shift in perspective. I think she was answering John, who said, what does church reset in us? Or what does it recenter in us? Which was good. And then Bonnie said it helps us to refocus on our mission when we get to be able to go to church and kind of reset ourselves. You know, I think a lot of people feel like the church, there are a billion reasons, I'm sure, of what people think the purpose of the church is, right? I mean, because everybody's working off their own experience in their life and churches maybe that they have experienced themselves. And I think, you know, so there's any number of purposes. I think some people look at it as just like a get-together thing. I think in the not too distant past, it was just looked at as kind of the thing you're supposed to do. Especially in certain parts of America, probably in America as a whole, even a little bit before that. And I think that there's, you know, just an obligation to it sometimes, like
What's
the purpose.
expected
It's
of us.
expected. Yeah, that's a good word. Maybe very expected just to go to church. And so I think sometimes when something carries with it like a level of expectation, this isn't what I was planning on talking about at all, but I think that it can become something that we all of a sudden feel like burdened with instead of something that we're choosing to do. Like, oh, now it's like everybody's expecting me to. There's this pressure from society, from my friend group, from my social people. And so now like I've got to go. And so anytime you're going into anything with like now I've got to go, like you're probably not going to have a great experience in that thing, whatever it is.
Well, I think down through the years our culture has changed.
I agree.
That's caused us to change. I know that when I was a kid, a young child, there was never a question about going to church. Everybody went to church. It was just, that's the way it was. That was our culture. That's part of what we did. And then,
Stores are closed on Sundays and all of that.
so slowly, you know, we saw this changing. You know, there was some rebellion, probably from some of the things we'll say here, you know.
Yeah.
But the whole culture of the church, it seems like to me, has changed. Maybe we're expecting too much. I'm not talking about we, us.
Sure. Yeah.
Or maybe we're not expecting, and I don't know the answer to this. I wish I did.
Yeah.
I wish I did.
Yeah. John had asked again in our chat, like, so putting ourselves again from a perspective maybe that's somebody that does not go to church and doesn't have a church experience, what might they have as an answer to this question of why do people go to church? And some people had already started answering. You know, Bonnie had said to tell that their perception might be to tell you that we tell each other just how good we are. Which goes back to kind of what we had a little bit said, right? We're full of perfect, you know, some places put that out there really. So we're going to read a couple of things from the Bible, go figure. And these certainly aren't like the end all of what church is or anything like that, but I thought they were two interesting things. We'll read those, we'll kind of discuss a little bit more. But if you have answers out there and you're typing, don't stop typing, because we would love to still hear what maybe you think people perceive the purpose of churches, or what you perceive the purpose of churches. Keep typing. Just because we're talking about something else doesn't matter. You keep going, and we'd love to be able to hear from you. Okay, so two of these passages. One is Jesus talking at the end of the book of Matthew, and he says this is kind of like Jesus has died, now he's getting ready to leave again, and this is kind of one of his final things. He says, "Go therefore," and talking to the disciples and such, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." So this is like a final, this is what you need to go do, right? So that kind of seems, in my mind, I was like, well, maybe that seems important. Maybe you should pay attention. If it's like one of the last things he's saying. Like, yeah, maybe that means something. And then another one is in Acts, and it's just talking about real early in Acts. So again, Jesus was here, he's gone. And this is what Luke kind of writes about what was going on then with the disciples after Jesus had said these things. It says, and they, the disciples, devoted themselves and others to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship and to the breaking of bread and the prayers, and awe came over every one of their souls, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles, through the disciples, and all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and their belongings, and they were distributing them, all the proceeds to everybody as they had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. One observation before I ask a question, one observation would be, so at this point, you even hear in that last one, like they were doing all these things, but then they were also, where did it say? They were going to the temple. But the temple wasn't like, quote unquote, church, like Christian church, because that didn't exist. Like that wasn't a thing. Like, so that wasn't like, there weren't like buildings that were like a Christian church, because that didn't exist. So they were like doing all these things, but then they were also going to their Jewish temple. And I just found that interesting. Okay, so when we read those passages, when you hear those things, Jesus telling the disciples to go and make disciples and baptize and all that, which is, I'm sure, the way Jesus said it. Just go do all that. Go do all that. And then what the disciples were doing. Did anything stick out? Did anything stick out in that? What might that be that stuck out to you while we read those passages about the church?
So in the passage of Matthew, when Jesus is giving the Great Commission and saying, you will go, it reminds me of those three little words that we talk about at Living Hope, where you belong and you grow and you go. And so back to what Mary was saying earlier, we have fellowship. You belong. You come to church so that you can belong somewhere and be one of many. And then you grow within that belonging, and you learn and you grow in your spiritual journey. And then when you've done that, you are then equipped to go and make disciples of nations, as Jesus, charges us with doing. Then in the Acts passage where they're talking about the apostles coming together and growing and everything, the first thing that struck me actually is perhaps that's one of the reasons that people don't go to church. Like if there are non-believers who say we shouldn't go to church because, they're just a bunch of people who think just like each other. So it's a bunch of like-minded people, and maybe that's a bunch of groupthink.
Yeah.
But then I consider, when I'm thinking of the people who sit in these chairs fairly regularly, and I'm like, we are like-minded in the fact that we all believe in God. But I would say that this is a very diverse group.
Yeah.
I mean, from all walks of life and all different thoughts. Diversity of thought is huge. And so I think that there are people who are outside of the church who look at people within the church and think we're all the same, and think that we all just follow each other around non-thinking and have no critical thinking skills or something. And I would argue that that's a flawed thought. Because we have a great capacity and we all have different gifts, and they talk about that too. And then the last thing, and then I'll shut up, I promise.
No, you're good. Yeah, keep going.
Is that somewhere in there, and I can't remember if it's in Acts or maybe it's in Hebrews, where it talks about how important it is to continue meeting together, to spur one another onward as the day approaches, and to not give up meeting together. And so to me, that does mean coming to church and having that fellowship. And continuing to go so that we can belong and grow and go.
Sure. No, that's good.
It says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. And Jesus said that.
One of the things before I let you kind of respond to some of those, what jumped out to you, is that okay? I'm going to jump in with a couple things that people had said. There's a lot of good conversation tonight, and I appreciate that. But it also makes it really hard for me to keep up with the conversation, which is fine. Keep talking. But Pat said, like, as far as one of the reasons why people might not come to church, or what they think the purpose of church is she just said some might say that the purpose of church is to tell us how sinful and wrong we are. And I think that
places are
that
like
really struck me. I thought that was good. And then Troy had said, I feel a sense of calmness knowing that God is in the room, and that I'm in the room with God. And I thought that was really good. Jennifer mentioned how much she likes the diversity of people, and that not everybody is the exact same. Mary, did you have any thoughts on those verses, or what jumped out to you at all while people are still typing? And if not, that's fine. But I don't want to not give you a chance to talk about what maybe stood out to you on those verses.
Not any more than did Susan.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of agreement with what Susan was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think what's interesting to me is again the fact that like a church as like an organization that was like really well organized, that was not, it didn't exist right there. That wasn't a thing. They didn't have like a.
Are you saying the church wasn't a building, Justin?
Yeah, like they didn't have like a place that they all came and gathered, that was real specific, except for like the Jewish temple. And if you're just jumping in with us, we're just kind of wrapping up this conversation. I know several people have jumped on, which is great. Welcome. We're just kind of wrapping up our last few weeks' conversation about why people don't go to church, and tonight we've kind of been talking about what people perceive the purpose of church is. And now we're trying to kind of come to some kind of conclusion about what is the purpose of church. Again, you've already started to hit on it a little bit, Susan. Like, it doesn't sound like it's maybe necessarily a super organized building necessarily, or a place. Mary, what does that mean? What does that mean for us then, if it's not necessarily
Well,
a
I think
place?
that we have to remember that we are the church.
Okay, say more. What does that mean, though? Because maybe somebody's out there and to us, we've heard that maybe several times. But
Yeah, we are the church. The church is not a building. A building is where the church meets. The church is the bride of Christ, which is us. And people have the wrong perception of that whole thing out there. They think a lot of us are just goody two-shoes, right? And none
Little
of
do
us
they know.
are. None of us are. But now, where was I?
The church is the people.
church is
Yeah.
the people. Yeah, we're the.
Well, the world needs to know that the church is the people, because the people needs to go. We're at the place where we need to go, and they'll learn, and it's up to us to tell them this building is not. It doesn't mean anything whether it's a beautiful building or not a beautiful building. It doesn't matter. It's where the church meets.
Sure.
And that's people need to understand that. They just judge the church by so many different things. People, yes. Buildings, yes. Time. How long does the preacher preach?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a big one.
Yeah, it really is. And I see no reason for that. I
Yeah.
really don't.
And I think it's interesting because, again, like what you're saying, like the church is the people. It's not a matter of where they meet, and that's what we're seeing, right? These people, this group of people that we read about that had been following Jesus. Now Jesus is no longer there, and yet they continued to find a way to meet and be together. It's interesting that Jesus didn't say, hey, now go off on your own. You guys don't really need each other that much. Like, you're cool. Go do your own thing. Like, you know everything you need to know about me. Like, and actually, and we don't have time, right? But like the deeper dive on the group of people even brought together, and you speaking about like who we're around and the diversity of that. I mean, he brought together a lot of people that didn't necessarily get along. A lot of their interactions were arguing. A lot of their interactions were who's best and who's right.
Fascinating.
And there was a lot of that, right? And yet, I think that was purposeful, not because of wanting arguing, but to really show like, hey, like this isn't gonna be always clean, and it's not always gonna be like real pretty all the time and everything else, but it's actually gonna be relationship, and relationship a lot of times has conflict, and relationship can have disagreements, and relationship is gonna be made of people that aren't exactly alike. And I think sometimes what we can do on accident and maybe on purpose is to try to make sure that everybody's same enough, Let's make everybody same enough to where we don't have conflict. And I think that's a mistake, right? Because I think we're all individuals and we're all being interacted with individually, and yet we come together, and that's what the church is, that coming together.
Yeah, and I was thinking a while ago when you say belong, grow, and go. I think if you don't belong anywhere, you're not going to grow. That's part of our growth, of being, assembling together and hearing the word and sharing. That's assembling together, but it's helping our growth.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so as we kind of wrap this up, because this will absolutely get away from us time-wise, so we're going to go to the end of it. It always does, right? So how we're going to kind of wrap this up, knowing full well that it's incredibly possible for you out there. You might be somebody that doesn't go to church or doesn't really actively go to church. Maybe you went to church before. Maybe you're somebody out there that does go to church consistently and has for a long time, and maybe you've gone long enough that you don't necessarily give a lot of thought as to why that is. I think either way, right? This is a good opportunity as we get ready to end. I would love to hear from you if you are somebody that goes to church. From us up here, obviously we're in a church right now, so we go to church. But what is it that you personally, take it off like this very like generalized, like out there, hypothetical kind of way, but what is it that you personally find you, I don't want to say you get out of church, but why is it that you go to church? Let's break it down to just that simple. So I would love to hear, and again, knowing full well that maybe your response tonight, your willingness to respond to just that question, why do you go to church? Somebody may see that response and be touched by that in a way that maybe inspires them to seek that out again in their lives. So take the time, if you've commented on nothing else, take the time, if you would, to just comment why you go to church, if you're somebody that does, and what that's meant in your life. And we'll do the same up here. So I'm happy to start if you guys want me to start, if you want to think. Why do you go to church? I think for me, there came a time, I always grew up in church, but there came a time where I realized for myself that I was interacting with God and God was interacting with me. And as a teenager, that concept was really overwhelming, and it really blew me away. And I thought to myself, there's no way I can. What I'm doing now is not sustainable. Just at my house as a teenager in my room, I'm not going to understand this more, and I'm not going to get better at living a life that I feel like this God who's taking the time to interact with me wants me to live just by myself. And I made a real conscious decision to be like, well, I'm going to try to surround myself with people that are going to know more than me about this and that can help me along the way. And I haven't always done a great job of that by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like I have done a decent job of at least proximity-wise putting myself in a spot where by being in church, by being in groups that are at church, or that are people that are, again, that are the church but are meeting at a coffee shop somewhere on a Saturday morning, I've put myself in proximity to be spurred on to be better and to learn and to grow. And I feel like that's what years ago God said, hey, this is what I want for you. Like, keep doing this, and then you're going to find out that really cool things will happen. That's me. What about you guys?
Well, what I have to say is very simplistic. I love the Lord. I really do, with all my heart. And if he said, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together, I'm not going to forsake it. Really, that's very simple, but it's the truth to me. I want to do what he wants me to do, and some of it is here. And he wants me to grow. I can grow better here, and it's just, I think it all comes down to finding Jesus. We just want to find him, and we want to love him, and we want to be where he is, and so we're here, and we're together, and that hunger needs to spread, and I don't know how to tell anybody to do it.
Well,
Well,
and it's
you
hard
just
to-
did.
You did. You did, but people have to make that step. We can talk until we're blue in the face, and people won't have a relationship with God until they choose to have a relationship with God.
You're right. It's a choice.
Mhm.
But it's also some of our responsibility to let this light shine in front
Right.
of them.
Sure.
Because they've never come to this place to make a choice. We're there as witnesses, as to give them our story, our testimony,
Yes.
so they can get to that place of choice. But we need to let the light shine. We do.
We do, and it reminds me too of where we need to be the hands and feet of Christ, right? And I never really understood that, and for such a long time, church was a thing that you were expected to do,
Sure.
or just what was the right thing to do, or I don't know what. And I went away from it for a little while, and then I came back, and it was very just about me and my relationship with God. And it took a long time to understand that relationship needed to spread and needed to be more out this way instead of just vertically. And it was hard, but why I come here and why I've thought that I keep coming back, right, is because you can worship corporately together and know that you're not alone and know that we serve such a great God. And then you can sit and you can learn about things that you don't know. And I can read a passage and maybe have known this particular Bible story my entire life, but I almost always learn something new. Reading it from a different angle or hearing the pastor say something different about it. And so there's that growth. And then and it's hard for me because I am not a social person, but to belong to this group and to grow with this group, and hopefully new members who come in too, and then go. It's good, and it's a refueling, and it helps refuel that light that hopefully shines, and that's what let them see you through me.
I got to tell you, when John was talking one Sunday about when the earth was void and without form, and God said, "Let there be light," and that light was Jesus, was the Holy Spirit. And I took that message, and I've shared it. Some guy in Chicago I was on a phone with, believe it or not.
You are so awesome.
And he said, and he got real quiet. It was some business. I don't even remember what it was now. But we got ready to hang up, and I said, "Oh, wait a minute." And I don't do this generally either. I said, "Wait a minute. I can't get off the phone without saying the name of Jesus." He said, "Please do." He sounded young. So I shared that message of John's with him, amazed. He didn't know anything like that. He was just blown away by that. But he also said, "We need people like you." He didn't know me. He's in, like I say, Chicago. "We need people like you to teach people like us." So we have a ministry, all of us.
Yeah.
What we know, what we grow in, we go. We take it out there. To me, that is so exciting. I don't think there's just anything in my life that would be as exciting or as fulfilling as leading someone to the Lord. I'm ready to cry. That's so good when God uses you like that. Just this little young kid saying, "Well, I didn't know that. You need to teach us."
Sure.
That's
Sure.
wonderful.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
No, I think that's good. As we get ready to kind of wrap up, our hope is always that this conversation, whatever it is, that one, again, you feel comfortable and safe to participate in it. That's, I think, first and foremost. But two are, we always hope that you walk away having thought a little bit deeper maybe and having experienced not just God like directly yourself, but God through other people that are commenting online.
Yes.
We always feel that way. God through something that somebody says or that you, again, read on a screen. And let's be real, like this meeting here tonight and you've experienced and you've been a part, this is church, right? It doesn't have to look as conventional as what maybe our thoughts are in our head, but it's sharing and experiencing together, and sharing life together, and being honest and vulnerable together. That's really, those are all things that go into, not an exhaustive list, but they're all things that go into what church is and what the purpose is. And we hope you feel that every week.
May I say one more thing?
You can.
Okay, I also talked to a young man this week from see, I like to talk, right? From A. Abel. I had to have my electricity checked upstairs. So he came in, and we did talk about the Lord. And he was a Christian, nice, wonderful young man. But he let me know that he went to church. He goes to church regularly. He said, but I go to this, what we call a prayer meeting on Friday night at my grandma's. And he loves that. He loves this church, and he goes, but he loves that other one too.
Sure.
And that just, I was just so happy for him.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. Those experiences are always so neat to have. Well, as we close, I've seen there are several prayer requests. We see, Kennedy, Marcus, you guys have posted stuff on there. I saw that John had said something earlier about Carrie. If there are more that I missed, I apologize. Again, there are plenty of comments tonight, which is awesome. If you see somebody that has commented and has asked kind of for prayer and things like that, man, take a minute right now and just pray for them before you sign off. That would be immensely helpful. Again, that's how we are. That's how we are in community with each other. You're a part of this community if you're watching, whether you wanted to be a part of this community or not. You are now, and so that's part of our responsibility. Hopefully, is to love and care for each other and to pray for each other. Just as like a housekeeping thing. So we won't be on next week. Again, this will be every other week. We'll get on the 9th, I think is what we said. It'll be a little bit different. We'll be going, and I'm going to mess this up. Give me like 2 sentences real quick, John. It's prayer something. Yes, yeah, this is, yeah, I'm actually. Okay, an experience of prayer leading up to Easter in this season, as we're going to be doing on Wednesday nights here at Living Hope. We'll be doing those at 7 o'clock, about 20 minutes. You're welcome to come. We wanted to make sure we said that. You're welcome to actually come and be here. If you can't, if you've got other obligations, we understand that. That also means that we, whether it's the three of us exactly or whoever happens to be up here, will be getting on. We still will be meeting and streaming and stuff on each of those Wednesday nights. And we're going to be doing that probably a little closer to 7:30. So if you're used to seeing us at 7, it's a little bit closer to 7:30. It'll probably be a little bit shorter. And we're actually going to be really talking about some of our experience in what we had experienced here in the building for those prayer times. So join us. Absolutely want to hear from you. We love seeing you and checking in with you guys. But we wanted to make sure that in a couple weeks you weren't surprised if it's about 30 minutes later. We wanted you to know that. I'll pray for us, and then we'll get out of here. Thank you guys so much. Always great to see you. Let's pray. God, we just thank you for being willing to meet with us. Again, what a crazy time. I've said this before, but what a crazy time, like that you're meeting with us here in a mostly empty, large room, but at the same time you're meeting with people in their homes and at work and who knows where else that are online with us, and you're meeting with us and you're connecting us all. Not Facebook that's connecting us. It might be the mode that we're using to be connected with you, but you're connecting us all, and we're experiencing you together. And what a crazy thing. That's just awesome that you're able to do that, one, and that you're willing to do that, two. And so we thank you. We pray for all the people that mentioned prayer requests. God, you just be with them in their situations, and pray that as those people cross our minds throughout the rest of this week, that we can lift them up in prayer. And we just love you so much. We thank you so much for all you do for us and who you are. In your name we pray. Amen. See you guys in a couple weeks.
Good night.